You're listening to How I Sell, a podcast built for early career sales professionals. You'll hear stories, best practices, and guidance from top sales leaders on what it takes to become a sales superstar. Today's episode is made possible by Ramped Careers. Ramped is on a mission to build the next generation of workforce-ready talent. Hi everyone, joining us today is Steve Botz, VP of Sales at Jones Software. Steve has had an illustrious sales career, holding senior sales leadership roles at companies such as Hightower, BTS, Honest Buildings. Steve, such a pleasure to have you today.
Thank you, Manoj. I'm happy to be here.
Steve, for those that don't know who you are, who is Steve Botz?
I think there's a lot of them out there. As Manoj said, my name's Steve. I'm currently VP of Sales for Jones. I've spent my entire career in sales. I maybe fell into it early on, like a lot of people do, and found a way in this profession, and have definitely made a career out of it. And I guess about me a little bit more, personally, like I have just in my career gravitated to now being in early stage technology companies. That's sort of a place that I found where it hits on a lot of the things that are core to kind of who I am as a person and what motivates me personally, as well as professionally, and sort of gets me excited about going up and coming to work every single day. And that's definitely not for everyone, but I think it's something that I'm fortunate that I figured out, because it's definitely been a key to helping me when I'm making my own decisions about where to take my career or what to try to solve for with a company and all those types of things. So that's definitely something that's become really core to my professional career.
That's amazing. And you mentioned, Steve, that you fell into sales, and we've done about 24 of these discussions with lots of sales leaders similar to you, and there seems to be that seems to be the common theme. There's very few people that have wanted to be in sales. Most of them kind of stumbled into it, but everyone's journey there has been different. So you graduated in 2008, similar to me. Probably one of the worst times to graduate, quite honestly. There were very few jobs. I was super depressed, and I'm like, what am I doing? Oh my God. And I went to a small state school, right? I went to a small no-name state school in Worcester, Massachusetts. And I'm like, what am I gonna do? Is being a wait staff my professional calling? Because I was rolling sandwiches at Subway when I was in school, and I was terrified. Thankfully, I ended up getting a job. But how did it work out for you? Like, how did you land the first job? And that was in sales as well.
Yeah. Well, I think probably similar to other people, I didn't really have like a strong sense of what I wanted to do when I grew up. We all go to school, we take, our all primary education is like general education, right? And then I got to college and people were applying to, be in accounting or finance or some pre-med or whatever it might be. There's people who felt like a very strong pull towards like a directional occupation. That was never for me. I just kind of was always more of a go with the flow, and I think that happens to a lot of people. I'm generally pretty outgoing, very sociable, and I think a lot of people get told, oh, you'd be great in sales, right, or this or that. My father was more or less in sales. He started his own business and always was in sales, around sales. So like it was something I had, I could see, that could work out. But then the actual job itself, I came home from break, my senior year, winter, and my parents were like, have you interviewed for any jobs? Are you getting jobs? And I was like, yeah, I'm getting around to it. And they made me go to a big East career fair. And there was like hundreds of companies. I'm going around and wasn't super interested in anything. I stumbled across this company that was doing energy efficiency retrofit projects. And I was talking to the person there. It seemed super interesting. And I was like, okay, great. And, I brought resumes. So I gave one in and then got a call back. Ended up going through a bunch of interviews. I was going to move to Texas. I was going to go through this training program. It seemed really interesting. It was involved in like all this, energy auditing and retrofitting and stuff. It just seemed kind of interesting and exciting. And so I ended up getting an offer and I took the job. And luckily, as you pointed out, this was May of 2008.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So I luckily had gotten the job right before I graduated, and pretty much had like a month off of school, moved down to Dallas, Texas to start a training program there. And then, halfway through, the world got turned on its head, and I was in a training program of 20 people, and one day we woke up and half of them were gone. And as well as, this was a Fortune Schneider, it was a Schneider Electric, they were like a Fortune 200 company. They had 200,000 employees, and I think there was like a 40% or some significant reduction in staff. So, going through that in your first, 3 months of your career was a little obviously jarring, because the idea that you're part of this, like your life up until that point, it's kind of like you have these, you go to school, you're in the school, you're like, you're not going to get, unless you do something terrible, you're going to get kicked out of the school or whatever. All of a sudden, this notion that, you just keep your head down and do your thing and everything will be okay. It kind of like, from a very early standpoint, maybe people like us got the opportunity, in a maybe in a fortunate way, to at least have an appreciation for like, okay, this is something that could happen with, through no fault of my own.
That's wild. So these are folks that started with you in your training program, half of that class was gone.
Yeah.
That's nuts, man. And I say this to folks, I'm totally with you. I think, in some ways that was a terrible time to graduate, but in other ways it ripped any sense of entitlement that I had in me, like completely ripped it out of me. I never, after that, take anything for granted. There's no job that I think is inferior or superior to me. I'm very matter of fact about it. I think I've gotten so much more pragmatic because of that. But to your point, so you walk into this job fair, you submit your resume. I'm assuming you had it printed out.
Yeah.
But even going in, like it wasn't I am an aspiring sales, none of that. But I'm assuming it was a general resume, or did you?
Yeah, no. It was just, I had a couple jobs, a couple internships, like worked in a bar, was a caterer, right? Like nothing that would prepare me for. I was a communications undergraduate with a minor in economics. So like I had a pretty general background, right? And I think in those conversations was where I had some other interviews, and it was my first time really interviewing in that standpoint. But I think, that more than anything was and for any, person who's aspiring to get in sales, right? Like, obviously it's great if you can demonstrate that you have some experience, and that will go some way, but you're coming out of college, right? Or, you're more than likely applying to a job where the requirement is very little to no experience. So a lot of it is going to be based on, you present yourself in an interview and how you answer questions and those situational types of questions and things like that. And, so yeah, there's not a lot of, and even having hired people out of college, there's only so much you can do to, glean what you can about somebody before they actually come and do the work,
Yeah, no, I think there's definitely something to it. The other thing that you mentioned is, after spending a bit of time selling in various different contexts, rising up the ranks, you've today come to the realization that, all right, a better home for me would be an early stage company. These are the types of tasks that I like doing. This is the type of work environment that I do. And I bet that you didn't have that level of clarity when you graduated, right, in the beginning. But do you think there's a way? Do you think there's a way of getting somewhat better at it? Because I didn't either. And I don't know if there is something that I could have done 10 years ago before I went and interviewed someplace, or during the interviews, for me to at least have a baseline understanding of, all right, I think I can do well at this type of a company or this type of a person. Is there anything you can do, or do you just have to pay your dues and work for a little bit?
It's tough. I mean, like, if I'm being honest, I probably wasn't the most, self-aware person when I was, 19, 20, 21, 22, sound like an old man, but like whenever you graduate, I don't think I had a very strong, I just didn't really have strong convictions about like what I wanted to do or what the company was. I had these preconceived notions, and what I was hearing, I went and joined this Fortune 500 company with benefits and all these, and people like 401k. I was like, okay, great. And at the time I didn't really care, but it seemed like it was the right thing. And it's funny, I remember when I was interviewing, I interviewed with the CEO of the division. very small side note, the company I got hired by, between the time I got hired and when I started, got acquired by a Fortune 500 company. So, when I actually interviewed there, it was a smaller company. But it was not by no means a startup.
Mm-hmm.
They had great benefits and all that. But when I was interviewing him, he was like, you should be asking about training. What is somebody willing to train in you? How much are they willing to invest in you? We're going to invest. They were like, we're going to invest $45,000 in your training before you even start selling. And I'm taking this as like, wow, this is great. They're really providing me with the tools that I need to be successful. And what I learned was like the training is valuable, but the reality is that experience trumps that, especially in sales, because sales, and I'm sure we can get into this, but like a lot of sales is discipline. You can go look at look at 5 or 50 different software sales companies or sales companies, look at their sales pipeline and how they instrument their sales process. Mm-hmm. It's very, very similar, right? They're all reading the same books. We're like, there's lead generation, there's discovery, there's demonstrations, there's qualifying the buyer, and all these different. There's a lot of disciplines that are core to sales. The experience and just the practice of honing your skills and being more disciplined is what ultimately, like for me, made me a better salesperson. So anyway, having said that, I did all this training and stuff. And then when I realized was, for me, that didn't translate to like classroom sort of selling and some cold calling and stuff, but it didn't really translate to me being better at the craft. And it honestly took a lot more longer, I think, to start to like get the reps I needed to actually figure out like what I was doing wrong and where I wasn't succeeding. And so that, going back to like, what are you looking for? I think as a person who's just getting out of school, the more you can, most people, especially if you've gone through the US education system, you probably have had part-time jobs or jobs, but like to go from that to a career is a huge change in the type of experience and just the types of situations you're going to get yourself into. It's like, it's by and large, it's pretty dramatic, right? So the faster you can sort of acclimate yourself to that, I think is better. And what I found is that so I would suggest 2 things specifically for sales. I would look at companies that like, what are they doing? What are they selling? And sort of like, for instance, when I was doing that job, the sales cycle was 2 years. Like it was a long sales cycle, to close a deal. Yeah, it was
that's the average tenure of a SDR is 2 years.
I know. So it took me, like in the course of 4 years, it took me a long time to lose deals, to win deals, and early on, you don't always get the sense of like, what am I doing right? What am I doing wrong? So I think if I had done something that was a little bit more fast paced, not necessarily transactional sales, but like an average sales cycle where less than 6 months, right? You're just going to naturally give yourself the ability to like experience things quicker and figure things out more, right? Mm-hmm. I think separate to that, what's the environment that you are best in, right? Some people like the idea of, I can go work for a company that's big, like a Series B, Series C, Series D company, or, if you're talking tech or other, where you're going to join a class like I did of 25 people, and you're going to go through training and you're going to be able to see, feed off each other. And that's great. That's super exciting. The trade-off there is that typically you're going to be, it's going to be a little bit more one-dimensional, right? There's going to be a group of people, you're going to have benchmarks against them, you're going to be able to see how you compare it, and then there's going to be more of like a prescriptive how you go from there, right? I personally found that a smaller setting where I got exposed to different things within the company, different aspects of the sales process, account management, integration, support, all these different things, like it naturally fed my curiosity. It also gave me a little bit more ownership over the product, and ultimately I think helped me like tell better stories in the sales process. Mm-hmm. So I found that in that environment, another big thing is like, when I was at that company, I had a manager who had a manager who had a manager, all the way up. And the only time I ever saw my CEO was on a teleconference. I went from there to a 20-person startup where I was reporting, I had a meeting with the CEO every week, right? Like it kind of blew my mind a little bit. I mean, obviously he was the CEO of a 25-person company, but he was still a very successful entrepreneur. Mm-hmm. He had already sold a business. Like he was extremely intelligent, really sharp. And I was just kind of like, the contrast was so stark. And for me, I was like, this is incredible. Like I am in the meeting where the CEO is like, I remember one of my first meetings, he was like, we were talking about something and he's going around the table and he was like, Steve, what do you think? And I was like, I've been here for a week. I don't even know what I'm doing. The CEO is asking me to weigh in on the decision. And I like, at that point I was kind of hooked, this is the exact kind of environment that I, wanted to be in. It took me 4 years to figure that out. Right. So, maybe, acknowledge as a person just getting out of your career, then unless you have very strong convictions about what you want to do, that you might not know, what you don't know. And it might take some experiences, positive and often negative ones, to help figure that out.
I think that's probably the best way to think about it, because you really don't know what you don't know. And oftentimes the only way you will know or get to know things is with the passage of time. And unfortunately, there's no shortcut to the passage of time beyond just living through experiences. And hopefully you'll have more good experiences than bad. And to your point, right, during your first two jobs, and I know that you made the transition from, a large company to an upstart. What are some memorable experiences that you've had selling, and what made them memorable? It's a two-part question. And part two is, what were some not so great experiences you had, and why do you think you had them?
So I think that it's a good question. I mean, early on in your career, the way you measure wins, or at least the things I remember getting really excited about, were the things later on in my career I really know not to get excited about, right? Like a great cold call, setting a meeting up, right? Or booking a meeting, or scheduling or like doing a pitch, right? Or doing a demo and hearing the people respond to it on the other side, right? I can remember distinctly like getting off a demo, my first tech company, and being like, I'm going to close this deal, and never heard from those people again, right? And I said it in front of my, my VP of sales at the time, right? So it's important to be motivated by those things, but I think the going back to like the discipline things, like what I remember most, or when I think about the wins that were the most exciting, they were the times in which, I rather than sort of get excited about something or focus on the wrong things, I stayed disciplined about the things that you need in order to actually get a deal done, right? Like, is the person I'm talking to the person who is a champion, right? Can they impact the decision, or do they have the ability to make the decision, right? Am I only talking to one person, or am I talking to multiple people? Am I accurately able to predict when certain events are going to happen? And am I getting feedback from the prospect that they're engaged in the process, right? Like those are the things that you learn to kind of like, quietly celebrate in sales. And then you really get to celebrate those times when you do all the things right and you close a deal. And it might not even be the deal itself. It's just, hey, you closed a deal. It was I remember specifically when I was working at Hightower, it was a leasing and asset management startup, and I was negotiating a contract with a really large real estate investment trust, and they had two different types of assets in their portfolio, and we were pricing them differently, and we had agreed on one and not on the other. And it was December 27th, and the deal was not going to get done. And I was like, well, can we push off the second one till the beginning of next year and just get the deal done for this one portfolio agree on? And they went for it, and we got it done like on Christmas and like New Year's Eve, and I hit my quota. And it was one of those things where, had that deal slipped into the next quarter, it would have just been a completely different experience. But the timing of it all coming together and everything was just absolutely perfect. And like, those are the things that I don't think ever forget as a salesperson.
That makes a lot of sense. And again, a lot of this will only come through experiences, right? I mean, you're able to speak about this so succinctly because you've lived through it. But do you think, again, going back to the question, some of these like tactical things about sales, should that be part of teaching at the college level? I mean, I wrestle with it back and forth because it's too niche, it gets too functional. Maybe college isn't the place for it, but then you have time when you're in school, right? That's the one thing that you have in abundance, is a lot of damn time. And I wonder what I'd love to hear your thoughts on it is, should there be more internship programs? Should companies subsidize some of that training that they have to do anyways after they hire somebody? Do you think this could be a part of curriculum? Or do you think there's some classes that may not be sales related might be helpful for students that are looking for career in sales or BD that they should take, or majors, right? Do you have any ideas on
Yeah,
it?
this could do a whole conversation on. I mean, I think of sales as almost like a trade, right? Like you don't go and learn how to be a mechanic or build a house in school, but you can go learn how to do that as a trade. Sales is maybe like a white collar profession. So you don't think of it as a trade, but it really is, right? And yeah, absolutely. Why couldn't you teach a curriculum? There's clearly science around selling. There's, as we talked about already, there's already like a common theme in how a lot of companies structure their go-to-markets. A lot of them are using the same softwares, that are all built on similar structures, right? Like certainly, you could educate students on what are the different ways in which companies measure, what is ARR, what is MRR. I mean, you could have courses built around these principles that would educate people on what they're getting into. And even simple stuff like sales. One thing that when you're early on in your career, right, you get a job and you get a quota and you have a number you got to hit, and that's like a very dramatic change. Before, again, you were trying to get an A or a B or a C in class. Like, it's a lot different than like, okay, you got to book this many meetings a month, right? Or you're not going to get your full commission, or you got to do this much quota, and that's like a very, very challenging environment to get thrown into. So having a little bit more ownership or agency or education around the things that will enable you to be successful. Absolutely. I don't think you're going to see universities adopt that, but I think you're probably seeing it now in like private classes and stuff. And, I think absolutely, like what we're seeing big picture around, the traditional 4-year university education system is certainly, it's certainly going to like ask these questions of like, hey, if you're planning to go in sales, like, what is actually the best way for you to invest in your education in order to get into that, right? Or de-risk the chance that you'll want to pursue that career. Mm-hmm. So, I definitely think there should be more. And I think, right now there probably is a lot available, but it's, as a person who is, in their career, who's trying to graduate and stuff, it might be difficult for them to know, like, where do I go or what resource do I trust,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Along those same lines, and thinking about it professionally, right? Let's say that you were in construction. How you can build a career in construction. You might be doing hands-on construction work, and if you like that path, you can choose to do that full time. If you feel like, I have a sales angle to it, then you can run your own company and you can hire others and build an empire out of it. I think it's a little bit unclear in sales, or maybe it is clear, and perhaps there's a way of framing it. What do you think are the career paths for someone that starts in sales? Because people don't quite know this. Is the only trajectory doing more sales for the rest of your life, or do you think that could be a good platform for other roles? Should you feel a little bit adventurous, and should you want to do something else? Like, what do you think sales will set you up for?
That's a great question. I think part of that does revolve around like the company you're at, right? Like, if you're in a big company with a lot of structure and divisions and people, and you're in sales, like there's going to be a natural gravitation towards continuing on in that career, whether it's you're selling more, you're getting bigger accounts, you're getting more responsibility, or you're going down like a management or a training track, right? And those are probably the most traditional things. One of the other things that I like about a smaller company, or like we could say startup to classify like early stage companies, is that there's a lot more opportunity, at least in my experience, to like, if there's just opportunities where if you raise your hand, or not even raise your hand, you kind of ask for forgiveness rather than permission of, I built out this training for all the salespeople because I was running into these things, or I saw this problem around how we're implementing customers, and I started like working on that. And I've seen people all of a sudden find something that they really, really love. It might be more operational than sales, or it might be customer oriented, or and I've seen them move into different parts of their career. So I definitely think there's opportunities to do it. I do think part of it is a reflection of where you are. I think the other part of your question is like, what can you do? And I'm in this this profession. I've been doing it for a long time, and every profession has its challenges. A lot of times, like a good example is there's a lot of people will be in an adjacent career to sales, like they're in real estate or they're in brokerage or finance, and they are like, oh, I want to get into sales. And I've seen a lot of people come into sales and not be successful because it's very, very, very difficult to get somebody to give you $1. Like, go try to sell somebody something, right? Go try. It is not easy to do. And to do it, there's a lot of the very basic idea is to get somebody to buy into a belief that not only what you sell is what they need, but that your company, you and everything are the person that they should invest changing their business or their processes in order to improve the goal. Like that is a lot, for me to go to my boss and ask him to give me budget to buy something, like I have to have a ton of conviction that is going to be successful. And the salesperson is the person who, if they do their job, well, will make it feel effortless, or will make me feel all confident and never feel like I'm being pressured into making a decision. And so, if you're able to, we're not really talking a lot about like the how-to of sales in this conversation, but if you're able to become a very disciplined salesperson, it will it will definitely help you build skills that will be very transferable to other aspects of your life, making compromises in your personal life, or in your professional life, or helping you kind of figure out like, okay, how do I get what I want, understanding the circumstances involved in the decision. So, absolutely. I think, there are sales skills that translate to many, many other aspects of life or careers, within the company you're at or other companies.
Let me ask you one tactical, how to in sales question, and it's less about selling a product or service and more about, selling yourself. If I were a recent graduate, or I might have had a year's worth of experience, and I see that, you're posting, you have an opening, I can call it an SDR, BDR, XDR, whatever it is, like your first sales job. What are some things that I can do to come in and like blow your mind as a candidate?
So, recently I had somebody send me a LinkedIn message, and it was a reference to like Villanova basketball and like a recruit that we had just signed or had committed. And it was one of those things where I get a lot of emails, and I work, right now I'm at a pretty small company, right? Like a VP of sales at a big company is getting a lot of prospecting emails and stuff that doesn't cut through the ether. And, something like that, cut through to me personally. Right. And then in the email, it expressed like a very, genuine desire just to want to, have a conversation and really ask for advice, not ask for a job. And I definitely think that that's a great way to approach a situation, even if you have a certain intent. It's a lot like asking somebody for their time is a big commitment. But if you can do it in a way that you've demonstrated that, you've put a level of effort into it, and you have a level of interest, and you have a level of empathy for who the person is and what they're trying to do, and you appeal to the sense of like, hey, I see that you have, you're in a position where I kind of like maybe want to be, or you're in tech, or you're in this, like draw some parallel, then great. Like that definitely appealed to me, and I ended up having a nice conversation with that person. And it wasn't like we hired him or anything, but I introduced him to a few people that I knew, and I know he had a few interviews and things like that. So I know that in a world where there's so much out there, it's hard. But I think that if I were somebody who's kind of graduating and looking to get into a job, the first thing I'd probably do is like, what are the things that I think I want in a job? Do I want a big company? Do I want a small company? Do I want to be in tech? Do I not? Start making a list of the things that you want. Maybe it's not a big list at first, maybe it's a few things, but use that to then narrow the field. Mm-hmm. Right? I want to work at a company with less than 100 people. I want to work at a company that has raised the Series A, so they have capital, but maybe they don't have, there's still a lot of growth potential. There's a lot of like very binary things you could probably, and then I would say once you've narrowed that down, then maybe identify like, you can use LinkedIn. It's a great resource to be able to find people and try to reach out to them. And I think the last thing is like, never underestimate like your network, right? Or, obviously if you can get a warm introduction to somebody, and again, with an ask that's reasonable, right? Not like, hey, can you get this person to get me an interview, right? But maybe could you get this person to, do a Zoom coffee with me and just, I'd love to ask them their thoughts on, how I'm trying to break into this market, right? I would say, you can then afford to be a little bit more targeted. You can afford to be a little bit more personable in your approach. And it's the beginning of an exercise that is leading towards you being a little bit more thoughtful about what exactly you're trying to ask. If you're just trying to get a job and you're trying to spray and pray, like, that is symptomatic of a lot of issues that you're going to face, regardless, right? You got to put a little bit of thought in care and intention in what you're doing in order to see the results that you want.
Yeah, absolutely. What's great about that answer, or that mindset, is I think you can take that and extend it to the prospecting process. I think asking for someone's time in a sales setting is quite honestly not that different from what you just laid out. I think there's lots of parallels there. Don't spray and pray. Don't go in with some kind of an expectation or wanting an outcome and being overly explicit about it, because you're still in the exploratory phases. You're asking someone that doesn't owe you shit to spend 10 minutes, 15 minutes, 20 minutes. I see a lot coming. I see a lot of emails. One of the things that we train our own fellows on is just, if you're putting the effort of opening your computer, typing an email, whether it's automated, personalized, manual, might as well do it the right way. I see a lot of people put in inordinate amounts of efforts to send a massive automated sequence that just ends up in someone's junk folder, or maybe they don't even respond. My thinking is just don't even do it. Go play video games or go do something else that might give you some kind of joy, because there's no point in it. So I think there's something definitely there. That's actually a great piece of advice for anyone that's listening to it. There's no alternative to putting a bit of hard work and differentiating yourself in a world where there's just too much noise. So thank you very much for that. I'll ask you one last question, and you've been very generous with your time. So one question is, with everything that you've learned, if you could go back in time and meet a version of yourself that's wandering around some career fair with a resume in your hand, and you could give yourself one piece of advice, what would that be?
Number one thing I would say is just, be patient, right? I think we all, we get out of, we're in our early 20s and we see what everyone else is doing, especially in, I'm old. There was no Instagram. There was nothing like that when I got out of school. But I know, like, in this world where it's like 24/7 content, who's doing the most amazing thing, faking it till they make it. Like, there's just this, and I moved to New York after school. Like, it was like a very much like, everyone was excited. The world, we were going to take over the world, whatever. Those 5 years, especially out of college, right? Like, you're not, if you fall into the right role and you're the top salesperson and you're killing it, that's amazing. But certainly, like, don't orient yourself around that, or have this expectation that, like, you're going into sales and therefore, like, you're going to crush your quota and you're just going to be making a ton of commission and all that. Really take the time to be thoughtful about learning and growing, and try to be, like, what I would tell myself is, and I mentioned this earlier, is that I don't really think that I was very self-aware of what my true strengths were, and what was an environment that would help me be most successful. I think I tried to, like, fit round pegs into square holes. So I would have just done that. And I think what it would have allowed me to do is, like, I went to this company and I felt a sense of loyalty. Like, this is the company that hired me. I'm going to be here for my whole life. And, even if it's not great or whatever, I don't think I challenged myself enough to know, like, well, what's going wrong? Like, how can I be better? And I think that I would have accelerated my career faster had I, just been of the mindset that, like, I don't know what I don't know. And it's going to take me some time to figure it out. And, solving for, you might not get the right, like, company or all these things, but what are the things that are important to you? Is having, like, somebody in a company that you can view as a mentor really important? Are you getting that? Do you feel like you're getting the, like, nurturing and development that you need? Do you feel like you're, getting the level of engagement every day? Or do you feel like you're just kind of going through the motions until you burn out? Like, those are the things that I would, caution myself to do. And just, if you're not feeling those things, like, it's okay to do something, right? And it's okay to fail, right? Most people, especially in sales, are going to fail when they come out. I mean, sales is like, it's like batting, you're a great batting average would be a 300, right? Or you're not going to win them all. You're going to lose more than you're going to win. And you need to understand that going into it. And there's going to be a learning curve. So you just got to be patient. You got to be kind of willing to go through the ebbs and flows, and, try to be honest with yourself about the things that are really important to you, and acknowledge when those are not being solved, or when they are, and either kind of move away from them or double down on them.
This has been phenomenal. Such thoughtful advice. I'm sure everyone that will listen to this podcast will get a lot of value from all of your feedback, guidance. Thank you again, Steve, for being so generous with your time.
No, absolutely. Manoj, it was a pleasure. Hopefully people can take a little bit of wisdom from this if they can learn from our mistakes.
I'm sure. Again, thank you so much. Appreciate your time.
All righty. Take care.